What if one ordinary shopping trip could end in handcuffs because of your skin color and a database that never forgets? This is the story of Malik Johnson, a black man wrongfully arrested inside a Florida Walmart, not for what he did that day, but for a decade-old warning that was supposed to expire and didn't. No one asked his name. No one checked his ID. Just one look. And the cuffs went on. And what happened next? It shook an entire system. In today's episode, we're pulling back the curtain on a quiet injustice that could happen to anyone, and revealing how one phone camera, one woman's courage, and one man's calm defiance turned a wrongful arrest into a national reckoning. Stay until the end, because what you're about to hear might change how you see justice, identity, and everyday power forever. It started like any other shopping trip. Malik Johnson and his girlfriend Kenya Moore were walking through a Walmart in Spring Hill, Florida, picking up groceries and a few gifts for the holidays. But what should have been an ordinary afternoon quickly spiraled into a nightmare. As they browsed the aisles, Malik was approached by a Walmart security specialist named Chuck Merrill. Without a proper look, Merrill believed Malik was someone else, a man named Corey Vander, who was banned from the store for being allegedly violent and carrying weapons. Merrill quietly alerted the Hernando County Sheriff's Office. A few minutes later, Deputy Jordan Hayes showed up. Without asking any questions, without checking Malik's ID, without even confirming his name, the deputy put Malik in handcuffs and told him he was under arrest for trespassing. The body cam footage and phone recordings began capturing the chaos. Kenya was in shock. "That was like 10, 15 years ago," she tried to reason with the officer. Malik, confused and alarmed, asked, "What are you talking about? We're grocery shopping." But the deputy didn't listen. "You're trespassing before. You're not allowed to be here," Hayes replied bluntly, already guiding Malik toward the door. "Where are you taking him?" Kenya called out. She started recording with her phone, capturing every moment. The disbelief in her voice grew, louder as she watched the man she loved being led away without explanation. "Oh my God, I cannot believe you're doing this." Malik tried to stay calm. "You know I'm disabled, right? I have back issues," he told the deputy. "You don't have to call me sir. I'm walking with you." But it didn't matter. He was escorted out like a criminal, with no one stopping to ask the most basic question: "Who are you?" Kenya followed, continuing to film. She was devastated. "You should be ashamed of yourself," she told the deputy. "We're just trying to do some Christmas shopping." And yet, not once during the entire arrest did anyone ask Malik for his name or check a driver's license. They assumed he was someone else, and that assumption was enough to put him in handcuffs. As they made their way outside, Kenya pleaded, "Let me get the keys. Hold on. Calm down. I need my medication." She was clearly panicking. Malik spoke up too. "Can I please take my medication first before you take me? I have blood pressure meds. I have anxiety meds. They're in the cart." But no compassion was shown. Deputy Hayes brushed past every plea. Malik tried to explain again. There had been a shoplifting incident over a decade ago, but he was told in court the trespass order lasted only 1 year. "That was 10 years ago," he said again. But the deputy wasn't listening. The only thing that mattered was what the security guard had claimed. As the arrest continued, Malik handed over his items to Kenya. "Can you take these?" he asked. She nodded, her hands trembling. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "This is crazy," Malik muttered. Still in disbelief, Kenya asked again, "Where are you taking him?" Her voice cracked. "This is disgusting," she told the deputy. "We were just shopping, that's it." Inside, Deputy Hayes returned to speak with Chuck Merrill, the man whose mistaken identification had started all of this. Kenya didn't hold back. "You guys should be ashamed of yourselves," she told them. "This is shameful." And then the truth began to unravel. In the police report, Merrill admitted he hadn't actually gotten a good look at Malik. He just assumed. And because of that assumption, an innocent man was now sitting in a police cruiser, under arrest. Sitting in the back of the cruiser, Malik Johnson remained calm. Too calm for someone who had just been wrongfully arrested. His heart was pounding, but his voice stayed steady. He repeated what he had already said, trying to make the officer see reason. "That was 10 years ago," he said again, referencing the incident that had supposedly led to a trespass order. "They told me in court it was only for a year." But Deputy Jordan Hayes wasn't convinced. "There's no time limit," he replied flatly. "Once you're trespassed, you're not allowed back. That's it." The decision had been made. The man they thought was Corey Vander was being booked. Meanwhile, Kenya Moore continued filming. Her voice trembled with disbelief. "This is horrible," she told Hayes. "We just came back from the Springs. We were in a Jeep with a boat, just out for the day." It didn't matter. Hayes repeated the same line over and over. "Once, you trespass. That's it." Kenya stayed close, refusing to leave Malik's side. "I'm not leaving him," she said. "We didn't do anything wrong." Back at the cruiser, Deputy Hayes remained under the impression that he had detained Corey Vander, a man previously banned from Walmart. To confirm the arrest, Hayes ran a check on that name. That's when something didn't add up. Records weren't matching. The man in the back seat didn't seem to have the background or the face of the person in the system. For the first time, the officer paused. He turned to Malik. "What's your name?" he asked. Malik looked him in the eye and replied, "My name is Malik Johnson." It was the moment everything shifted. Hayes, realizing the gravity of his mistake, quickly began to walk back his actions. The arrest hadn't just been premature. It was entirely wrong. He had never verified Malik's identity before putting him in handcuffs. Now, with that truth staring him in the face, he offered an apology. "I'm sorry," he said. Then, in a stunning reversal, he told Malik he would take him home. For a moment, there was relief. Kenya exhaled. Malik leaned back in the seat. It looked like justice was finally taking shape. But the peace wouldn't last long. As they drove, Deputy Hayes received a call from his supervising sergeant. The voice on the other end gave an order. "Send a photo of the man you've got in custody, along with a shot of his ID." Hayes pulled over, took the photos, and texted them to his supervisor. A few minutes later, the call came back. Malik, the supervisor said, had been issued a trespass warning from Walmart years ago. It didn't matter that it had happened a decade earlier. It didn't matter that he had been told in court it was valid for only 1 year. None of that mattered. The supervisor instructed Hayes to bring Malik back to the jail and book him. Just like that, the apology was erased. Malik, who moments ago had been promised freedom, now found himself being turned around and taken straight back to the Hernando County Jail. No violence, no confrontation, just the quiet heartbreak of a man who had done everything right, but was still treated like he didn't belong. This time, Kenya couldn't stay with him. Hayes made it clear, if she came back to the store, she too would be arrested for trespassing. Shaken but still composed, Kenya told Malik she'd call their friend Brittany. "I love you," she whispered. The car pulled away. Later that night, during the jail intake process, Hayes once again confirmed Malik's real identity. He knew the man sitting in front of him wasn't Corey Vander, but by then, it was too late. Orders had been given. Malik Johnson, a man who went out to buy groceries and gifts with his girlfriend, had now become a defendant in a criminal trespassing case, and it all started with a false assumption and the failure to ask one simple question. "What is your name?" By the time Malik Johnson was processed and officially charged, it was no longer just about a single mistake or one misidentification. This wasn't just the story of a security guard who guessed wrong or a deputy who didn't ask for an ID. This was about something much bigger, about how systems, unchecked and unquestioned, can turn suspicion into punishment and routine profiling into permanent damage. In the official statement that followed, the Hernando County Sheriff's Office defended the arrest. According to them, the trespass warning from Walmart remained in effect. They argued that it had never been formally rescinded, and therefore, probable cause existed for Malik's arrest. On paper, it sounded logical. By the book, maybe even lawful. But in the real world, it was outrageous. Because court records from over 10 years ago told a different story. Back then, Malik had been involved in a verbal argument with a cashier over a returned item. It was minor, no charges were filed, but a manager at the time had issued a 1-year trespass warning, standard procedure. The judge clearly stated that after 1 year, the ban would be lifted unless renewed. It never was. But Walmart never removed it from their internal system either. And that's where this becomes systemic. Because what no one saw coming, at least, not yet, was that Walmart had no clear expiration system for their bans. Warnings stayed on record indefinitely. Unless someone high up decided to manually remove it, it stayed there, quietly waiting to become a trap. A time bomb disguised as a policy. That revelation didn't come from lawyers or reporters. It came from inside. Just a week after Malik's arrest, a man named Marcus Allen stepped forward. A former asset protection manager at Walmart, Marcus, had worked at several stores across Florida. He reached out anonymously to a local investigative journalist, and what he revealed was damning. According to Marcus, internal alerts were rarely audited. "We were told to leave trespass warnings in the system unless corporate told us otherwise," he said, even if it had been 5, 10, or 15 years. And yeah, it disproportionately impacted black customers. Everyone knew it. No one said it out loud. Marcus even provided email records showing that warnings against potential threats were often flagged for extended duration, most of them involving black and Latino individuals. When asked why, he replied bluntly, "Because we were told to be safe." And people assumed safe meant suspicious if the customer looked a certain way. The documents Marcus shared spread quickly. News outlets picked it up, civil rights attorneys began circling, and suddenly, Malik Johnson's story wasn't just about one wrongful arrest. It was a spotlight on a policy that had gone unchecked for years. Community groups mobilized. The local chapter of the NAACP called for a full audit of Walmart's trespass warning database. Protests began outside the Spring Hill Walmart, with signs reading, "Not a threat, just shopping," and 1 year means 1 year. At a press conference, Kenya Moore spoke directly into a microphone, holding back tears. "You should never be able to imprison someone over a ghost from a decade ago. Malik didn't break the law. The law broke him." As pressure mounted, Walmart responded. Not with an apology, but with a statement doubling down on their system. They claimed that store bans were at the discretion of management and that warnings, regardless of age, were enforceable unless officially revoked. That sparked even more outrage. Because who decides when a trespass warning ends? Who has to ask for it to be lifted? And more importantly, how many others were out there living under invisible restrictions for mistakes? They no longer even remember? This wasn't just a legal failure. It was a cultural one. It was the slow erosion of fairness in the name of liability. It was what happens when big corporations are allowed to act like police, and the police act without asking questions. Malik Johnson became the symbol of that broken system. He wasn't a threat. He wasn't armed. He was just a man trying to buy groceries on a Sunday, and for that, he was arrested, booked, and labeled a criminal again. Not because of who he is, but because of what the system still believes people who look like him are capable of. What happened to Malik Johnson didn't disappear quietly. It echoed through courtrooms, newsrooms, and living rooms across America. And for the first time in a long time, the people responsible were forced to respond. It began with the lawsuit. Malik filed a federal civil rights case, naming Walmart, security specialist Chuck Merrill, and Deputy Jordan Hayes as defendants. The charges were serious: racial profiling, false arrest, unlawful detention, and violation of due process. The lawsuit sought $10 million in damages, not just for what happened that day, but for what had been taken across a lifetime of being seen as a suspect instead of a citizen. Legal experts weighed in almost immediately. While Walmart claimed the trespass warning was still valid, Malik's legal team came prepared. They produced court documents from a decade ago stating clearly that the original order lasted just 1 year. No extension, no renewal. And even more damning, there was no record that Malik had ever been notified of any ongoing restriction. It was essentially a ghost policy being used to justify real consequences. The public response was swift. Protests spread beyond Florida. Celebrities and influencers posted the body cam footage and Kenya Moore's recording across social media. The hashtag Justice for Malik trended for 3 straight days. Civil rights attorneys began comparing his case to others involving outdated databases and racially coded enforcement. The story hit a nerve, and Walmart couldn't hide behind silence any longer. Still, the company refused to apologize. In a tightly worded statement, they reiterated that store bans are private property rights and enforcement decisions rest with management. But behind closed doors, internal emails leaked. They revealed top executives scrambling to audit thousands of similar warnings nationwide. One internal memo read, "Review every trespass record older than 5 years. Prioritize cases involving law enforcement calls." It was damage control, too little, too late. Meanwhile, Deputy Hayes was placed on administrative leave. The sheriff's office opened an internal investigation, not just into Hayes's actions, but into policy failures that allowed an arrest to happen without ID verification. During a tense town hall meeting, the sheriff faced the public. Kenya. Moore stood up, voice shaking, and asked the question no one had dared say out loud. Would Malik have been arrested if he were white? The room fell silent. In Tallahassee, lawmakers took notice. A group of state legislators introduced the Fair Identification Act, dubbed Malik's Law, requiring law enforcement to verify identity with government-issued ID before making trespass arrests based on third-party claims. The bill received bipartisan support. Advocates said it was common sense. Opponents claimed it was redundant. But after weeks of pressure, a hearing was scheduled. At that hearing, Malik spoke publicly for the first time. Calm and steady, he told the panel. I'm not here just for myself. I'm here because I know I'm not the only one. We've built a system where private businesses can hand out lifetime sentences without trial, and the police enforce it, without question. That's not justice, that's control. His words hit home. Within weeks, Walmart announced they would implement a nationwide expiration policy for all trespass warnings, limited to 2 years unless renewed with new documentation and video evidence. All employees were to be retrained on racial bias and de-escalation. For the first time, they publicly admitted that mistakes were made, but not before the damage was done. And Deputy Hayes? While the sheriff's office never issued an apology, the investigation concluded with disciplinary action. He was removed from public duty and reassigned to administrative services, far from the streets. Quietly, a note was added to his personnel file. Failure to follow identity verification protocol. But none of that would have happened without Kenya's video. Her phone, the simple act of recording, became the most powerful piece of evidence. And because of that, other victims began to come forward. A single moment of courage turned into a wave of accountability. Malik's story wasn't just about one arrest. It was about showing what happens when people speak up, when victims say no more, and when the world, even if for just one moment, listens. Malik Johnson could have been any one of us. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't fight back. But in staying calm, he exposed the chaos of a system that sees color before character. If this story made you angry, good. That means you're awake. If it made you hopeful, even better. That means you believe we can change things. Don't let Malik's voice be lost in the noise. Hit the like button to show you stand with justice. Leave a comment. Have you ever experienced profiling or seen injustice up close? And subscribe, because we're just getting started. More real stories, more truth, more voices that deserve to be heard. Let's make this go viral, not for views, but for visibility. Because silence protects power. But you can break it.